This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So we are back with Tom Daves, and we're taking a trip through history. And he was sharing with us a little bit about his first deal, how he got started in real estate, and honestly, a lot about how his faith has supported him through a career that spanned multiple decades. But Tom, so what was real estate like in the 1970s? You said there was a book. You said you would drive around, no cell phones. Anything else that stands out to you? What were interest rates?
Well, interest rates, they eventually worked their way up into the 18% in the 80s. Okay. And we had to be extremely creative. We had to find a way to still solve problems. And I always believe that money exchanges hands when problems get solved. Buyers had problems. They wanted to buy a house. Interest rates were 18%. What did we do? We found assumable loans. Back then, you could just go in and assume someone's loan and just start making payments and take over those payments and start sending the checks to the bank and give the seller, a few $1,000s to transfer title, and you were done. So there were a lot of great ways that we could help buyers. There were ways that we could help sellers still reach their goal, buy and sell. But it was definitely fun and it was interesting.
It was different. My parents talk about, I think the first home they bought, they had to use seller financing. Yeah. Because the sellers were willing to take a lower interest rate. So the sellers were becoming the bank in the 80s.
Seller financing was prevalent. We had the AITD. That's
what's that?
All-inclusive deed of trust, where it was basically a wraparound where the seller would carry the entire amount of financing and take over the underlying note. So we had also, there was second carryback, there was a third carryback.
Oh, wow.
A lot of secondary lenders that would fund the cash. And unfortunately, there was also some people that were taking advantage. We've always had people that have tried to take advantage of buyers and sellers. So that's where we as professionals really needed to step in and make sure that they weren't taken advantage of and that there were no, weren't involved with any risk. So yeah. It was definitely the wild, wild west.
That is part of the problem. When people get creative, sometimes people get taken advantage of, right? Because you're like, oh, this is a great idea. Nobody's done it before. We can do this. And then it's like, oh, my gosh, you just totally got scammed. But so you got started in the 70s. You're selling through the 80s. By the end of the 80s, roughly how many people were you helping a year?
So I was serving, on average, about 10 to 12 families per month. And then the 90s came along, and of course, through the inflationary times, then we hit the recession, and there were actually a lot of foreclosures in the 90s, and that was my first taste of foreclosures, real estate REO properties, where banks would take properties back from the owners. So I was able to, I learned back then, one of my favorite sayings was from Wayne Gretzky: you have to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been. So
when I think of Tom Daves, that's the quote I think of. Like that's, yeah. We need to get a tattoo.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people get it wrong. They say you have to skate to where the puck is, but no, you have to skate to where the puck is going to be. And so during that time, I was single, and I used that quote in a lot of cases, dating. So
okay, you got to skate to where the puck's going to be.
Wow. That's a whole nother story. But I got involved with the banks back in the 90s, and I would just get in the plane and I would just fly, to Dallas, to Denver, to Atlanta, wherever. I would drive down to San Francisco Bay Area to meet with the who's of the banks to really help them get their properties sold, and it was fun.
So the 90s kind of laid the groundwork for what was later to come into the 2000s.
It did. Yep. So then in the 2000s, of course, everyone remembers, man, the economy was flourishing. Values were just jumping. And I got involved with flips, buying and selling properties and putting them back on the market and doing flips. I did hundreds of flips from 2000 to about 2008. And probably, I get back to my fail forward. I probably got a little bit too greedy and had too many of them going and just thought, man, the market's going to continue to just go crazy. Back then, I mean, you could not make any mistakes. The market corrected for any mistake that I could ever make. It made me look really, really smart. But then, unfortunately, when the market tanked in 07, 08, I had 36 personal flips in my portfolio that, basically I had to do something with. I was selling them and renting them and giving them away. I actually lost, almost $1 million. So it was definitely really, really humbling. And it was a great learning experience for me.
Well, what was your biggest takeaway after seeing massive success and then boom, this unforeseen instance? Never happened before in real estate.
Never happened before. I think, the verse pride goeth before a fall. I just got a little too prideful. It's just like, man, things are doing great. I'm doing great, and probably could have been a little bit wiser with, with the commissions I was making. I was, buying big houses and cars and boats and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, when it tanked, getting back to that anxiety that I've been troubled with through the times. I was like, what am I going to do? What can I do? So I knew that the banks were going to start taking these properties back. So that was when I jumped back into the REOs, and I just got on the phones. And stuff happens when you pick up the phone and you just start talking to people. There's so many people and agents, they just get in paralysis of analysis and they won't do anything. They'll just kind of hunker down. You need to just pick up the phone and start talking to people, and things will happen. So I called the banks. I got on the plane again, went to Dallas, Denver, Atlanta, LA, and I reconnected with the banks. And man, I'll never forget. I went to Freddie Mac in Dallas, and I would just call them up and say, I'm going to be in Dallas next week. Could I stop in and connect with you? And they say, well, yeah, if you're going to be in town. I'm like, well, yeah, I am now. So I would fly there. I met with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but I met with Freddie, and they said, well, your timing is perfect. We're looking for a REO broker in Sacramento. How many properties can you handle? And I said, how many do you have? And they said, 56. I said, wow. Yeah, no problem. So they listed 56 properties with me that week in Sacramento. I was buying computers and hiring staff and secretaries, and it was just like drinking out of a fire hose. It was
so cool.
Crazy.
But there's some key takeaways that I get out of that story. One of them being, one, you picked up the phone. Two, you showed up. And then three, like, you actually made it happen. Like, many people, you're right, would start with, hey, this would be a great idea if, but they wouldn't get on, they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I was literally talking to a guy on this Sunday. We were at a networking mixer, and he was like, hey, I'm thinking about buying property in Oklahoma. I can buy 10 houses for what I can buy one out here. So I'm just going to buy 10, and I'm going to figure it out. And my suggestion to him was, well, have you ever, like, flipped a home like long distance in Oklahoma before? Like, do you have contractors? Do you know anybody over there? He's like, no, I'll just figure it out. And I said, well, how about you do it once, see if you like it, and then try doing 2 homes at the same time. He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. That plane tickets are expensive. Why would I buy one house? That just doesn't make sense for the plane ticket. I'm like, bro, like a plane ticket's a couple $100. You're buying a house for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. He wasn't willing to invest a couple $100 to flip one house, whereas somebody like you, Tom, gets on a plane and then shows up, and there's no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, right? There's no guarantees.
Well, one thing I always appreciate about you, Johnny, is you're constantly going to events, putting on events, and going to networking events because you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to connect with others. And that's one of the things that I've also done, and that's how I learned where the skate to where the puck is going to be. Mm-hmm. I would connect with other top agents and brokers throughout the country. Hey, the market is tanking. There's going to be a lot of REOs and foreclosures. You need to connect with, this is the vice president of, Chase Bank, or this is B of A. And we would connect and network and trade cards. And it was pretty exciting. It was pretty fun.
Another cool thing about your story is how you were seeing a massive amount of success. The market turned, and then in that turn, when a lot of agents were getting out of the industry and a lot of agents were struggling to even have a listing, you ended up finding an opportunity in that. I think it was Dallas. Is that where you flew to? And you walked away with 50-something listings?
Yeah, 56 listings. And so it was fun. And then a lot of it is to just provide value, really deliver exceptional results because let's face it, I mean, it's an extremely competitive real estate market, competitive business market. So really had to differentiate and deliver exceptional results and really make a difference to really help these banks. So we did everything from cradle to grave. We would go out and do the initial site inspection, determine occupancy, find out if there was a tenant or an owner. Little side story. I mean, it was crazy how you would have different people in the home. Sometimes, you'd meet an owner and they were really upset with the bank and mad, and they would, like deface the property before they would leave. But one time, I'll never forget, I went to determine occupancy. The home had just gone in foreclosure, and there was an older couple there, and they were expecting me. I knocked on the door, and they had just cleaned the house. They had just vacuumed the carpets, and they were handing over the keys. We were like, oh, we're so sorry. So, so it's just kind of interesting, the different type of personalities that you would meet. But back to the bank. Yeah, we provided service from cradle to grave. We have contractors to go out and fix the properties up, get them ready to go and rehabbed on the market, get them marketed, and get them, get top dollar for the sellers. Not really that much different now. We need to differentiate ourselves, provide value, and make a difference, really identify what they're looking for and how we can serve them. So it was pretty fun.
Well, that brings up a good question that we'll discuss when we come back from the break. Like, are foreclosures coming? Is there a new wave of foreclosures coming with these high interest rates? Back in a second.
So, Matt, I know you've been having to fix some things around the house lately. I'm trying to
that's my life.
Right? I've been trying to repaint my house because it's a lot of work to try to get things fixed up, especially if you're maybe thinking that you want to sell your home and you're like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I just want to be done. That's what Margie and Ben were feeling when they want to sell their house in Rancho Cordova. They wanted to sell in as-is condition, and of course, they wanted top dollar. So they called our friend Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves real estate team. He got them 8 offers on their house, almost $20K over list price, and it sold in only 17 days.
Wow, that's incredible. And you know what? Johnny Jennings can do the same for your family. There's a reason why they are number 1 in all of Sacramento, why they have so many 5-star Google reviews. If you're curious, hey, what would my home sell for in as-is condition? Go to tomdaves.com, type in your address right away. You find out what kind of offers you would get, even a cash offer. The website again is tomdaves.com, or feel free to call Johnny Jennings anytime. He's a great guy. You can trust him. 855-TOM-DAVES. License number 581837.